When was the first time you met Sly Stone?
Well, he was the disc jockey number one, so I used to call on him. You know, he did the show in Oakland. If I had Aretha Franklin, who'd I go to? Went to Sly. If I had anything of an R&B nature, I would go to Sly, who was working at the R&B station. During the mid '60s, I was out in San Francisco, working in the music business for Columbia Records. As I worked as a radio promotion man, I got transferred to Hollywood, and I was there for about a year and a half. And then after that, my goal was San Francisco. Folk music was in before that period. I was there maybe in the '60s in San Francisco, but it was still like the Kingston Trio, the Brothers Four, Peter, Paul, and Mary, that kind of thing. It was always seemed corny to me, even though I was responsible for breaking Bob Dylan's first record called Subterranean Homesick Blues. And that kind of started his career. I'll leave that aside. This folk music was now here. I hated it. I mean, even though it was a wonderful time, they added rock to it. As soon as they added rock to it, then I got into it. Because, it had a good beat, it had a good story. But you give me 10 records, you just come out of the studio, I can pick out the one we should run with. There were two disc jockeys, Tom Donahue and Bob Mitchell. They were at KYA, which was the top 40 station in San Francisco at the time. But these two disc jockeys, they came from Philadelphia, and I think they ran out of Philadelphia because the payola scandal was out back then. They came to San Francisco, got a job, and they were really good. They were the top two guys at this station. So they started doing the big shows at the Cow Palace. They got Chubby Checker to come in, and they filled the place. And they were the first ones in the country that ever did that kind of thing. And they were really crazy guys. So they had Chubby Checker out there, and they filled the place. But they would be on the radio show promoting their concerts during that period of time. So they could, and then they started a label called Autumn Records. And that's where I really first heard Sly. AM was the big kind of station back then. AM was boss. So they took over the FM side of the radio for KYA. And the guy that owned the station said, just do what you want. So what they did, they really started FM underground radio. That's where I bring my Bob Dylan, Don Giovanni in Hell, anything. They'd play anything. They're just dying for something different to play. And that really kicked off FM radio. Those two guys were really innovators. Then they started the Autumn Records. Then they got Sly in, and Sly became the producer. I believe he produced the Beau Brummels, which was a hit group, and then Bobby Freeman. He put, I remember the recording, he put one record, I think, on Autumn, it was called Buttermilk. I just kind of knew him, and then when he went with Autumn Records, that's when I really knew who he was. I mean, as a producer, not so much as an artist, but as a producer. We would get together, once in a while, or else I'd just give him a call on the phone, those kind of things. But I actually tried working on that record of his, Buttermilk, the first one they released on Autumn Records. Because I would take it around to other stations, if I could get a chance to get it played, to try to get it played. But nothing really ever happened to it. It was just too new at the time, But it was a fun record. That's where he did this. He did that ham bone thing that he used to do. He used to kind of. So we have this party. Oh God, Aretha performed with this band, and they were just fantastic. And the band that I had, I called New York. I said, look, I've got a band. It's unbelievable. They'll do the recordings for nothing. Aretha won't charge nothing. I can get the studio time from a friend of mine that had a studio in San Francisco. I said, I guarantee you I'll get you as many hits as you can sell. They said, yeah, I stopped playing A&R, man, and let this go by and whatever. Anyway, that was Sly and the Family Stone with Aretha Franklin. And I thought they turned down Aretha Franklin and Sly and the Family Stone on the same phone call. And then the next place she got with Jerry over at Atlantic, and she did Respect. Kaepernick was then head of Epic Records for A&R, artists looking for. So I said, okay, I'll be in. So he comes in, and Sly don't go on until 2 o'clock in the morning. So we drove down to Winchester Cathedral, and it's all Sly, and we stayed there all night. And then, of course, David was very, he loved him, So we got out of there in the morning about 7, and then we went to a restaurant. They met that night, and then they signed papers, and he took care of his mother's house, paid the mortgage off, and all that kind of thing. Put a lot of money into Sly. Anyway, Dave Kaepernick, took over management of Sly, and he did the job. I say, as a manager, he's probably the best one around. So he went out and borrowed money. I think it was from his brother-in-law, who gave him, I think, 100 grand or something to start it up. And they immediately had a marriage. I mean, it was right because Catholic, for him to say I'm going to give up my job as vice president of CBS and Columbia Records, and with Epic Records at the time, it meant a lot. I think at that time, Catholic simply fell in love with Sly. Because Sly really, he played the most soulful stuff. A lot of stuff that was on the first album, he was already doing. Everybody is a Star, Different Strokes for Different Folks, the Dance to the Music, Hot Fun in the Summertime, all those different things. But then I went into business with Robert Mercy, who was an A&R man with Columbia. He and I started a label and had it distributed through Bell Records, which is Clive Davis's old label, Bell, and then became Arista Records. All these things connect together, I guess.